Hi, I'm Diane Brady, and I am here with Chase Peterson-Withorn, who is the Deputy Wealth Editor at Forbes, of course, Chase, and you have a fantastic story outlining basically how much money these various funds and people stand to lose because of Sam Bankman-Fried. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, how you got this story in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So Sam Bankman-Fried was on the Forbes 400 list of the richest Americans and our world's billionaires list over the last couple of years as he's raised a lot of money from venture funds and pension plans and all sorts of other billionaire, hedge funders and things like that. And as part of the process going through and valuing Sam Bankman-Fried and figuring out how much money he's worth at any given point in time, we've gone back and forth with him, and one of the big components of that is how much of FTX he owned. And as he raises more money and more funding rounds, that number changes. And so over time, we were always in communication with him about how much of FTX he owned. And so this past August, when I guess below the surface there was a lot of stuff going
Yeah,
on.
little did you know how
But
useful that would be.
yeah, exactly. Whatever was going on at the time, but I can't even imagine. But for us, he was still, putting on the front that everything was normal as he was to everyone else, and so he sent us a capitalization table that showed some of the major shareholders of FTX, including him and his co-founder Gary Wang, who was also on the billionaires list. But it also had the shareholding of a number of other entities that are big investors in FTX. I presume as of August. So we were able to take a look at that. And as FTX is now going bankrupt, and it's unclear whether these shareholders are going to walk away with anything, and the numbers are looking pretty big, how much money they owe. So it's unlikely. We could kind of see who's really on the hook for a really substantial amount of money.
Walk us through it because, even the funds, there's some real, stalwarts, Temasek, the Ontario teacher, pension plan, and of course, the Sequoias, SoftBanks, et cetera. So give us a bit of a TikTok. Let's start with the people, because being Diane Brady, the name Tom Brady just sort of like sang out to me. How much exactly did he have invested, and how much does he stand to lose?
Yeah, and what's interesting about Tom Brady is that it actually comes from an earlier cap table that we had gotten from Sam Bankman-Fried. And so, it's not entirely clear exactly how much he owned as of now, or as of, right before everything went sort of downhill very rapidly. Right. But based on that cap table, from before, we had something like, according to Sam, what he told us was that Tom Brady owned something like 0.15% of FTX, and then Giselle owned 0.09% of FTX, which is those are in a sense, they seem like very small numbers. They're small percentages, right, but they were small percentages of a really big enterprise. And so if you look at, FTX raised money after that, and so you would think that Tom and Giselle's stakes were diluted a little bit, yeah, but not by too much. So I think, our estimate was that Tom and Giselle own about 0.14% for Tom Brady and 0.08% for Giselle, which again, they seem like small numbers because they're small percentages, but really, at the peak of FTX earlier this year, when they raised money at a $32 billion valuation, we would think that Tom Brady's stake would have been worth something like $45 million, and Giselle's stake would have been worth something like $25 million. So about 70 million maybe combined.
Let's hope they have other sources of income, right, at this point. But were you struck when you looked at these cap tables by the investors? I mean, is this a pretty common roster of players? And obviously, I know they all have small percentages, but I found myself surprised at the number of players that were investing in, what's still viewed to be a very risky asset, even if you're investing in the exchange. I mean, just give us a sense of some of the names there that came out to you.
Yeah, well, you're totally right that it's a new industry that's maybe relatively lightly regulated. There's a ton of uncertainty, and that was true before all of this happened. And so it is interesting that the names of people who invested in FTX are really some, sort of blue chip names in the industry. It is like Sequoia Capital, Paradigm, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan was a big investor. SoftBank was a big investor. Tiger Global was a big investor. And I think, one of the main reasons that, that Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX were able to raise so much money from all of these, sort of major players is that they were seen as sort of the stable, company in the space. And there was a lot of trust and faith in Sam Bankman-Fried as a sort of serious business person and a visionary and all of that. And he was a big presence on Capitol Hill and, a big donor. And so where other, competitors maybe would have sort of ignored the regulatory concerns or had sort of a brash attitude toward it.
Yeah.
Sam Bankman-Fried, I think, was seen as more of the safer choice, somebody who was looking for a way to work with the government and move this entire industry forward and make it more mature and things like that. And so he was able to attract, that's not the only reason, but it's, a big part of the reason he was able to attract some real heavy hitters, in the investment industry.
We should probably point out, I mean, it seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that they perhaps lost a couple of $100 million, which sounds like a devastating amount, but for many of these particular players would be a little bit like sprinkling fairy dust, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a very important point to make, which is that the amount of money that some of these funds and investors are losing is a large amount of money to the average person. It is not a large amount of money to any of them. These are big investment funds that have billions and billions and billions of dollars to invest. And oftentimes, they're going to invest in a portfolio of a ton of companies, knowing that some of them are going to go bust. And if one or two or three or however many of them are successes, then they'll be wildly successful on the whole. So, it's not devastating to any of those funds. Although I think this is maybe one of those ones that for a while there was really looking like a great investment, the sort of thing that could really help your returns. And it turned out that it's very much not.